It's a great honor for me to be here at the Empire Club of Canada today, which is arguably the most famous and historically relevant speakers podium to have ever existed in Canada. It has offered its podium to such international luminaries as Winston Churchill, Ronald Reagan, Audrey Hepburn, the Dalai Lama, Indira Gandhi, and closer to home, from Pierre Trudeau to Justin Trudeau. Literally generations of our great nation's leaders, alongside with those of the world's top international diplomats, heads of state, and business and thought leaders.
It is a real honor and a distinct privilege to be invited to speak to the Empire Club of Canada, which has been welcoming international diplomats, leaders in business and in science and in politics. When they stand at that podium, they speak not only to the entire country, but they can speak to the entire world.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Empire Club of Canada and to our celebration of International Women's Day. My name is Sal Rabani, and it's an honor to stand before our community as chair of the Board of Directors of the Empire Club of Canada. To formally begin this event, I want to acknowledge that we're gathering today on the traditional and treaty lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit and the homelands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. We encourage everyone to learn more about the traditional territory on which you work and live. Our mandate at the Empire Club is to engage and advance the dialogue on what matters most to Canadians. For more than 120 years, we've provided a forum for speakers to engage, debate, educate, and inspire. 2 days from now, on March 8th, it's International Women's Day, a yearly celebration of women excellence, and a reminder that gender equality is one of the most effective ways to build healthier, more prosperous, and more inclusive communities. I want to recognize the Empire Club's distinguished women past presidents, board of directors, staff, and volunteers. Thank you for your contributions and for always showing us that gender equality is one of the most effective ways to build a healthier and more prosperous future. A big thank you to our guests for joining us on the Empire Club stage today. Arlene Dedier, Principal and Executive Vice President, Canadian Practice Leader, Project Management Services at Avison Young. Julie Di Lorenzo, President of Mirabella Development Corporation. Chantal Gosselin, Corporate Director of various TSX-listed companies active in the mineral industry. And Dr. Deborah Rosati, Founder and CEO of Women Get On Board, who will moderate today's conversation. The Empire Club of Canada is a not-for-profit organization, and we'd like to recognize our sponsors who generously support the club and make these events possible. Thank you to our VIP reception sponsors, Bruce Power and Wheaton Precious Metals. And thank you to our season sponsors, AWS, Bruce Power, and Hydro One. Thank you. For those of you joining us online, if you require technical assistance, please start a conversation with our team using the chat button on the right-hand side of your screen. We're accepting questions from the audience for our speakers through that Q&A portal under the video player, or for those of you in the room, you can undertake to scan that QR code found in your program booklet. Like you, I'm eager to hear from our distinguished guests, so I'll try to be brief. A week ago, we hosted a fantastic event celebrating Black History Month, Black excellence, by having 4 incredible Black women leaders sharing their inspirational stories. And from that event, the words of Claudette McGowan, the CEO of Protexa, who's on the panel, still resonate with me. She said, "I don't want to be a prisoner of the past. I want to be a pioneer of the future." This is so powerful, and thank you, Claudette, for sharing this with us, this bit of inspiration. And if you read the profiles of our speakers today, you know that they are all pioneers of the future. We often talk about breaking the mold and pushing boundaries, and I'm confident our guests today are in the front seat of thriving against all odds. Mining, real estate, construction are some of the most important sectors driving Canada's growth and our prosperity. But there are also industries where historically it has been more difficult for women to break the glass ceiling. Today, We're meeting the women who are rewriting the script in these traditionally male-dominated core sectors. More than once, our guests today were the only women in the senior management committees or in the boardrooms that they found themselves in. There's so much to learn from their stories as we strive for positive change in our communities and our workplaces. Mining, real estate, and construction are also industries that consistently struggle to attract diverse talent at all levels, particularly women. You know, as Canada faces a labor supply shortage now more than ever, we need women leaders to be empowered to drive our country's economic growth. We're seeing positive changes, and that's no accident. Arlene, Julie, Chantal, Dr. Rosati, your success is as tangible as are the challenges you've had to overcome to get to where you are today. We need your stories to be heard by more of us, and especially by the younger generation, of which we're proud to be hosting today students from Downsview Secondary School, Queen's University, and Humber College. A round of applause. To our panel, you're paving the way for the next generation of women leaders. Thank you for sharing your stories, and thank you for showing the young female leaders that we have with us today that success is not only possible, but it's also replicable. It is now my pleasure to invite to the stage today's moderator and the esteemed panelists to take over and start our discussion.
If I put these on, I won't be able to see you. I can just see my material, so maybe that's a better thing. Anyway, thank you, Saul, for that wonderful introduction. I don't know about you, but I am just smiling ear to ear. What a turnout. Thank you, Empire Club. Thank you, sponsors. What a panel. I am so excited to dig into their stories. I love that quote from Claudette. They are pioneers of the future, and I think the stories will really resonate today. And so we're going to have about a 25-minute conversation, and really through the conversations, these amazing panelists have all frontiered in industries that really have been male-dominated, predominantly real estate, mining, construction, as others are nodding their head. And I come from the technology sector, and I'll put that sector in there as well. So sort of to set the stage, we collectively agreed that we would talk about, in order to speak to our individual experiences, we talk about the industries that we came from to sort of set the stage so we can talk about the opportunities and challenges. And then we're gonna end with how we celebrate ourselves and celebrate others, because that's all about International Women's Day, which is this theme for this year is inspiring inclusion. And so let's begin our conversations. I'm gonna just put it in context. So 2020 data, so in 2023, Osler's does an annual board diversity disclosure report. And I've been using this as my base since 2015 when they first started reporting, when the Ontario Securities Commission came out with their comply and explain regime to public companies. So either comply, i.e. have more women on your board, have more diversity on your board, or explain. And so when Osler started doing this report in 2015, when you took the collective TSX listed companies, which is 700 plus, it was only 12%. And then last year when they released the report, it was just under 30%. And I will tell you in that 30% number, there are industries like utilities, pipeline, telecommunications, media, and financial services that are over 30%. And then there's industries like life sciences, mining, technology, real estate's about in the midpoint that are just approaching 20%. Now, that is for board members, but likewise, those are the industries that are trending for executive positions, executive officer positions for women. And so when we think about it, Apple, the largest tech company, just announced in February that they are at gender equity. So when I look at that large tech company and they can do that on a global basis, there is no reason why in Canada, doesn't matter the industry, that we can't be promoting and championing to get more women on boards and to get more women into executive leadership positions. So, setting the stage, we have some amazing panelists that are going to share their stories. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Arlene, because I know you have some great data. You're passionate about your industry. You come from a phenomenal professional background, and it probably wasn't a path that was well-traveled.
Well, thank you. I just have to say it's an honor to be here. If you had told me 30 years ago that I'd be sitting on the stage of the Empire Club, I'd say you're crazy. And so just to set the stage, if we know Canada is 51% female, male-dominated professions are those that are 25% or less. So for construction, there could be a debate. It's either 12.1% or 14%, depending on StatsCan or the National Association for Women in Construction. I typically use 12.1%. Of the 12.1% women that are in construction, 7.1% are white, 1.7% are Asian, 0.7% are Latinx, and less than 0.5% are Black. I'm a miracle, you're welcome. And our First Nations brothers and sisters are too few to be counted. That's a problem. It's a problem, and the stats haven't changed. I've been doing this talk for a long time, and it hasn't changed over the decades. So the other thing that I want to point out is that of the 200,000 women that are in construction, only 27% work on site. That's 1 in 4. And so you would think about that. There's 1.1 million people in construction, 5% are female. We're talking about inclusion, and we'll talk about a path of how we were going to do that. I also happen to practice architecture in my past, not currently, but of the architects in Canada, 25% are female. And of the 25% that are female, again, less than a percentage are Black. So as we have this conversation today, I want to talk about looking at male-dominated professions, but also looking at the intersectionality of people, whether it's ethnicity, race, visible or invisible. Everybody has their own stories. I like to say her story. And with us being in what I like to call our primehood, we have some stories to share with you, so that just sets a context for construction.
Well, thank you, Arlene. You see, she came very prepared. Julie, hopefully you can keep up with that.
Not with this. Can I have those? So I am going to tell you a different, more like a practical version of what happened. I started in 1982, and this room is incredibly refreshing because that's not what any room looked like in 1982. And when I was president of the Home Builders, I think my fantastic team at Build, filled with women from Build, came here today. You wouldn't see a lot of women at the boardroom table either. You certainly wouldn't see a lot of female-owned development companies. How do you do it? You're going to hear this over and over again from people, so I don't want to be repetitive. You literally have to know more than anybody else at the table, and you literally have to know who your competition is. And so every time you'd be there, if there was a gap or a scope gap, you'd say, I can do that, I can do that. And that's how you slowly penetrated something that was quite impermeable. But you also have to take steps to make change and to forge your path. There was once upon a time a story, and it's a true story, where I walked by a room where someone says, she can't do this job because she's pregnant. And I thought, did he just say that? and so what I needed to do, though, is very quickly understand that I could not function in that environment. Not that I had to leave, but that he had to leave. And so you do also have to make structural change to ensure, because you can't win that battle. If you've got people that don't believe in you around you, you cannot, you're going to be too exhausted. You need to find a way to constantly pave the road for yourself and also to be ready and be more informed. Is it different now? To be honest with you, no. There are not a lot more people who are developers, and I'm surprised every summer when we take recruits that I still have a ratio of 1 to women out of 7 or 8 students that come. Maybe we could do a better job at attracting people to our profession. Let me explain to you how important our profession is, besides the practical that everyone lives or works in a physical structure. Canada's got the highest ratio GDP relating to housing, 8%. If housing's not doing well, our economy has a very, very hard time. Most GDP countries of the OECD are about 3 to 4%. Now, why you would say that could be of concern as to why so much of our economy is housing, but we know that we've got the capacity to bring in immigration. We're going to continue to bring in immigration. So we'll be one of the only countries in the world that has the ability to grow, to sustain the immigration levels because of our topography and because of our resources. And housing and real estate and construction will be one of the most important things. More important, don't get mad, automobile, than automobile. and also changing the perspective of politicians. I will literally go up to Minister Champagne and say, enough of automobile. You've been neglecting our industry for so long. It's time that our industry got attention. And you're saying, well, that's not a woman's position, but yes, he sees my face as a woman leading the industry, advocating, and that's how we make change in terms of having a greater presence of women in our business.
Yeah, and maybe just to follow on to that, you know, when they say when it comes to consumers making purchasing decisions, housing being one of them, real estate being one of them, isn't one of the prime decision makers women?
Right, it's actually quite incredible that for the most part, the decision makers who were delivering the product didn't have that connection with the client themselves. So it's really long overdue. We've got to make inroads, and I would tell you that if you're going to choose a career path, for the young people that are here, our industry is phenomenal. I always say psychology, architecture, engineering, law, marketing. There isn't a scope. It's the real Renaissance profession. You don't have to be in construction and think that you're going to be not just the person driving the truck. You could also be the person driving the truck and designing something. You could be the person that is looking through the legal documents and becoming an expert in that area. The breadth of capacity that our industry holds for people and for women is extraordinary.
Thank you, Julie. We're going to turn to mining. And I'm sure you've got your perspective with your long tenured experience and where you are today, Chantal. So maybe you can sort of set the stage for the mining industry and where it is today and where maybe you'd like to see it going.
Well, mining and oil and gas, which is the extractive industry, is the 3rd largest contributor to Canadian GDP. So it's a very important sector. Now, again, like my colleagues, mining is underrepresented for women. We are barely 15 to 20% of the workforce. Now, mining, like when you're talking about the workforce, the bulk of it is located at the mine sites. So, and mines are not in big center like here. They're either in remote location near a small community or in a place where you have to stay on camps at the site for 7 days, for example, on site and 7 days at home. So you can see how particularly challenging it can be for a woman that wants to have boots in the ground, experience at the site on the technical side when they're considering to have a family. So with that, I mean, there's a number of avenues and opportunities that we can think of to help entice women to come and study in the mining sector. And one of them is agnostic of the sector, but one of them is having more services to help raising families. The second one is about having flexible schedule. When I'm thinking of COVID and all the negative impact it had on the society, on the flip side, it helped I guess, management to be more accepted of having flexible schedules. And the pendulum went one way, and I'm just hoping that it won't go back to pre-COVID where, you know, there's no flexibility. So I think that will be very helpful to make sure. And I do try to make that point at the board level. And lastly, it's more related to mining itself. The new technologies where they are developed to trying to get the employee to not necessarily be on site at the mine sites, but rather being remotely operating, whether it's equipment or doing their task outside of the mine site itself. So there's a lot to be done, but I think that's how we can approach it from the mining side.
So hearing sort of each one of your perspectives, and we're going to drill down a little deeper on the challenges and how you can overcome them with, and I think you did a great job, Arlene, of talking about diversity lens, right? But there's a commonality, and I think it goes back to, is that you can be defined by the past as it was, or you can be a pioneer of the future. And I think having women leaders that are frontiering, that are on the front line as making decisions, we can make a change for this next generation of women leaders. So I'm going to turn it to you, Arlene, and would love to get what you've had to do to overcome some of the challenges in your 12.1% industry of women in the industry, and how you look at it from a diversity lens.
So I would say that we know that there's systemic barriers, and we know that there's challenges that we face internally when you're just defined by what somebody sees. So newsflash, I know I'm a Black woman. I'm not surprised at what I've achieved. You might be. That's not my issue. And so that's the first thing. That box that frames you is the other pieces for the formwork that puts that box or creates that, I don't call it a glass ceiling, I call it a concrete ceiling. It's not only the external things that's piling on to do that formwork and pouring in that concrete, it's also the baggage that we're carrying as well. If we start to believe the things that people are saying or defining in terms of our capabilities. How do we change that? I call it like angel investors, champions, sponsors. The one thing that I know is the biggest changes and pivots that have happened in my career have been coming from external pieces where I started to believe the story that somebody was defining by me, and someone saw that there was an element of what I could bring to the table, and it pivoted. And here's the thing. You might not have that person that pushes you or pivots you, but you have to listen. You have to be open to hear what's being said, because you don't know what you don't know. You're not even sure what you're really capable of. I mean, my aspirations at 20 and my aspirations in my primehood, I'm not going to say a number, are completely different. I feel like now I'm just getting started, right? It's just the tip of the iceberg. And that's from moving from places where you walk in the room and we were just talking about this at the table, and nobody thought I was the architect. They were asking me to make them coffee, right? Nobody thinks that I'm running the $200 million construction project. They think I'm the assistant to my assistant, right? We're used to that. That's not the issue. The issue is when you start to buy into the story, the outside story, in order to break that, picture a concrete ceiling. You know how you break through a hole? You drill holes through the corner. Those people that are helping you and guiding you, they're building those holes. So when you smash the center, that's how it starts to crumble. And only when you're open to hearing that, you know what, Arlene, I see that you could possibly do this. The first time someone said that to me, I laughed. And he said, don't do that when you walk into the room. And I was like, okay, I get it. I needed somebody to say that, to reflect, so that I could see my reflection through their eyes, rather than just the definition. Because every time I thought I'd made it to the top, something else happened, and it propelled me further. So don't be defined by your limiting beliefs. Be open and receptive, and challenge with empathy, not only the people around you. Don't walk in with your own bias or buy into theirs, but be open to receive it.
I love it. There's a term that I'm going to put out there, and you've touched on a few of the points. Allies, and you can break it down. It's an acronym. A stands, so everybody needs allies to lift them up. And allies, we had a speaker, Gabrielle Schuster. Glenn Keeling was on our panel. And I think it's really important to think about what ally stands for. A stands for advocate. L stands for listen. The other L stands for lift. The I stands for inclusion. The E stands for elevate. And the S stands for sponsor. And those are the people, and that's what you need in your community. I'm not an architect, so I can't do concrete frameworks, but foundationally. And so, you were talking about listening, and you were talking about inclusion. And so I just wanted to kind of pause on that as a reflection as we continue our conversations. So thank you, Arlene. And how compelling, and like you say, the empathy. I would have no idea what shoes you stood in without knowing your background. And boy, you've got some pretty high shoes to fill from anybody else. Over to you, Julie.
A little while ago, I heard Gina Davis speak on the Jane Project, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. To simplify it, she was studying film and saying that even in crowd scenes, there were more men in the crowd than women. At boardroom meetings, there were more men in the boardroom than women. And her concept and the philosophy of it was that the more you saw more men, you got used to seeing more men at the boardroom. So what I had to learn is, I call it my photo bombing. Is that when you jump in front of a picture? So all our lives, I'm sure, were more subtle than our peers. And it was really time to say, well, it's not just for me, because I find that I'm very low-key. It's for other people to know that that's possible. And that's why you have to be photobombing. That's why you have to be pushing that boardroom door open. I literally went to a meeting about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was 3 minutes late. A little bit more, I'm Italian, so a little bit more than 3 minutes late, 5 minutes late. And all the guys had sat themselves around the table, and when I walked in, they didn't open up the table to let me sit down. So my first instinct was, I'll just sit over here, what's the difference? I'm still gonna be functioning. But I actually thought, no, trigger, can you guys move? And that makes a big difference. It's not their fault. Go think of that Jane Project of if you're taught in a movie that you're not gonna be at the table, you're not programmed to expect someone to be at the table. So that's our role. Having had the experience, I promise to be more photobombing so that you promise to follow and do it and then lead in front of me, pass me, pass me. I'll give you a cute little story. A young student of mine, a summer student, we take summer students. She was in front of me and she was talking about her job this summer and mentoring, and also I learned just as much from the younger people, and her phone died. And so I went and bought her a battery pack and sent it to her and said, don't ever tell your boss your phone died. Is that really, it was just a little thing to show her I'm there for you. These little nuances make a difference. Be present, be ready, and then the opportunity is there. So really think about that, being out there, being an advocate for each other. I have another thing that I say, and I'm sorry to take more time. I used to say that we could help each other one by one. With the state of what's out there, I think it's like helping 3 people each. And so we just have to expand that commitment to actually be there for each other, advice, mentoring, and leadership.
Wow. I hope this is getting recorded because there are some great nuggets here. Chantal, so what, from your perspective, you've given some examples, but what else would you're sitting around boardroom tables these days, right? And you have this opportunity to really make sure voices are heard. And making sure there's a diverse lens in which you're making decisions. So any stories you want to share?
Well, I have many stories from the mining side of it when I was working in mines, but without going through the details, a lot of those stories taught me that you need to be resilient and very speak up when you see unfair situations. And it's a little bit the same as at the boardroom. To speak up and be assertive when you're believing in something that is unfair, or speak up for other women that are not in the room. So yeah, I think mostly it's about being resilient and really, really speak up when there's something that you feel is unfair.
I'm going to throw in the power of 3. Anyone that's interviewed me or followed me, I talk about it all the time. And this would, whether it's in a boardroom, whether it's in a mining site, whether it's on a construction site, whether it's in architectural firms, the power of 3 is 1 woman is a beginning, 2 is a presence, and 3 is a voice. And we've all had to break through traditional barriers. I have one of my FCPA good friends here with me, and we came from a very traditional accounting firm background. And I was early on in my career, I was articling student. I was probably in my 2nd tax season. I was probably no more than 20 at best. And I had a senior male partner tell me I would never be a CA. That was pretty defining. But I had allies around me. And I never let someone define who I was going to be. And I don't think anyone should. Because, I'm sure there's a multitude of stories, but I want to share that because that was a very male-dominated profession back in, I am in my primehood and beyond, 40 plus years ago. But you know what? No one can define you. If you have the courage and the confidence, you just want to keep stepping up those ladders, and it might be a bit of a jungle gym, or a lattice that you're climbing, but keep climbing. Don't let anyone push you down. So I think we've kind of talked about overcoming some challenges. What I'd really love to hear from all 3 of you, because I think as women, we don't celebrate ourselves enough. We're busy celebrating others. We don't celebrate ourselves. And, it really is part of your branding, it's part of your story. And, when I founded Women Get On Board, I knew by founding it wasn't for me. I had a higher purpose. And I definitely wanted to elevate that next generation of women corporate directors. So I spend every day celebrating women, every moment, every time I get an opportunity, and I think we all can do that for each other. So Arlene, how do you celebrate yourself first?
I don't even know where to start with that. It's a challenging one, but I'll tell you a story. I had my team do an intervention. They wanted to submit me for an award. And I said, I haven't done anything yet. And they sat down, and they said, these are all the reasons that we have to do it. And I was like, fine, if you guys want to do it, I'll review it, I'll give you my input, but whatever, it's good, knock yourselves out. So all of these people did all of this work, and they submitted this package. I think it's the proudest award that I've ever received because it was around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's Catalyst. It's a Catalyst Business Leader Award for Canada. And the craziest thing was we won. I didn't win.
There, take a moment.
My team was so excited. They were crying. They were like, it's a weird thing because you get to a certain age and you feel like you have to be the mentor, the champion. You don't take the ladder up with you, you pass it back down. These are all things that you need to do. The weird thing was, they reminded me that they are my champions, right? That the mentoring isn't one directional, that I'm learning from them. I'm learning to accept myself and take time to do it. So from my incredible business partners and leaders, and I've got a whole table of Avison Young people here, to the folks from the Board Diversity Network that pushed me to, I'm now board ready, call me. And to my team for winning this, I realized, yeah, even now I'm reminded that there's still work to be done, but I can also sit back and look at some of the accomplishments and to be open to receive those things. We could talk about the hard times. We could talk about the, sort of hidden figures, bathroom scenes on construction sites, but we could also reflect on the positive steps that we're making forward. So, yeah, I think that's
Thank you. Yeah, Julie. I mean, impressive, and it is hard. It's humbling when somebody wants to nominate you and you look at it and you go, I'm not worthy of this, I shouldn't. They're like, no. And sometimes people actually have to wrestle you to the floor to do it. But what I would say, my takeaway, if somebody wants to nominate you, you go, hell yeah, nominate me. What do you need? And don't ever reject it. Somebody is looking and saying you are worthy of this. So don't ever refuse it. Don't ever say no. Over to you, Julie.
So I am rewarded by the fact that I absolutely love what I do, and also how I've explored rewarding myself is that you have the financial capacity when you succeed to do things you love. And so a little story about, I was interviewed to borrow money once, and the person, a very prominent person, and the first question he asked me was, is your eye off the ball at work because you do so much charity work? And I thought, and he was brilliant, so he did tons of charity work, and I said, no, because I can't make my presence going to Vegas with the boys. I can't go to the bar to have drinks because I got to be with my kids probably doing their homework. And I can't do some of the things that most of my peers do to get to know each other. I'm not condemning it, just very, very different. So how I got to do that was going to the table where charity was being done, so serving on boards, donating my time to the hospitals, et cetera. And the answer to this gentleman who was interviewing to lend me money, I said, well, I'm on the board of St. Michael's Hospital, and where could I possibly sit once a month with 3 bank chairmen? So it really made a lot of sense, but incredibly rewarding. And so that's how I celebrated, and I've been very, very lucky to have the freedom to be able to do those things.
Thank you. And you know what, I think part of that giving back to community, we were chatting about the board work and associations and industries, that you can give back to your profession is so, so rewarding. We were sitting at the table today and saying, you know, being part of this head table for Empire Club, the people that you meet that you wouldn't meet otherwise. And so those opportunities are there, and I loved how you framed it up, because that gives you the opportunity to celebrate you, but celebrate your community.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Julie. Chantal, how do you celebrate yourself?
I think it's a fabulous, wonderful thing to receive awards and recognition. Personally, where I feel the most rewarded is when I get a phone call from someone who's going through a difficult patch in her career or a difficult situation, and they're asking my help to try to navigate through that impasse. And that's when I draw on my past experience and try to help them to navigate through that. So I find a large self-fulfillment doing that. I do have a couple mentors as well, and I think we talked about that, Arlene.
Yeah.
One of them has been there since I started in the industry. And I find that very helpful because you can bounce back ideas, and it helps you to see other perspectives. So that's the first one. Another way I celebrate myself is by investing in myself. And by that I mean we buy some nice houses, homes, cars, shoes, purses, clothes. So I approach it the same way by investing in myself and my technical skills or my soft skills, and also to expand my network, which is, I think, one of the most important things to do. So seriously, when we're thinking about if an employer cannot help, is investing in ourselves and thinking that we can do it by ourselves. And it stays with us. You keep that with you, and it helps you grow through your career, and I think it's a wonderful thing to do.
Thank you. I don't know if we have 10 minutes left. Someone was going to cue me. I just wanted to make sure. Are we on to Q&A? I'll maybe grab one more question from each of the panelists, because I think they all have stories to share. But what I would, before we go to Q&A, because I do see there's a couple questions, I want you to, if you had to look back on your younger self, I know this question gets asked a lot. If you had to look back on your younger self, what would you say to yourself? 12-year-old Arlene, what would you say to yourself?
So I give 3 pieces of advice when I do these talks. Number 1, dance with your fear. Don't let it overwhelm you. Don't let it make you immobilize you and freeze. Dance with it. Take it down to the ground. You're going to hear 100 no's. So if you're worried about somebody saying no, let that go. Send it out to the universe. You're going to get 100 no's, but in there will be 1 yes. Okay? So dance with your fear. Just keep moving forward. Don't let anything stop you. straight ahead. Second, challenge with empathy. You don't know the intersectionality or the history of the other person, man, woman, black, white, yellow, brown, invisible challenges, you don't know that. So as you're being confronted, as they say the most inane things to you, and you want to go bananas, challenge with empathy, right? So that you can, and let them finish, and then respond. So you can center yourself and then respond, because I think I've heard it all. And the last one is, it's our responsibility to give back and pay forward, right? I wouldn't be here without, especially there's a woman sitting there at the table that has elevated me to a position I could never have conceived. Thank you, Sheila. And she told me that 7 years prior, and I didn't listen. I didn't listen. Be the champion, be the mentor, be the ally. There's some conversations that woman or that black woman or that other person can't have. It's not our responsibility to educate everyone on their lack of knowledge or understanding or lack of empathy. We need allies to be in the room for us. So I would say, if you want to make an impact, any one of those three things.
Wow, great advice. Julie, we're going to move you to your 20-year-old self, not your 12-year-old self.
Okay. I would say that because know your nature, and because my nature is trying to always solve things, you got to really appreciate it. Sometimes you can't solve everything. And I found that I spent a lot of time fixing people and things sometimes that couldn't work. And so you have to learn to move on. You have to learn to say, I need to find people who believe in me. I need to find people who, in my weakest moments, are encouraging, and not people that bring your energy down or take away from you. You just have to be able to move on. So it's not about being weak. It's just about saying, it's not for me. I've got to move on.
So sort of setting some boundaries for yourself.
Exactly, right. Yeah.
Chantal, your younger self, what would you tell your younger self today?
I would say that take those jobs that are not popular, the jobs that are really hard, that don't seem very interesting, but that will make you go through some hardship, which will make you grow and also experience different things. I think that's pretty what I would say on top of what you two mentioned, but I think it's very important to not be too selective on what you're going to do. So that will bring you somewhere where you can use that experience and leverage it for the future.
Thank you. I know we can continue. I'd love to just chat with them all day. If you bring me a bottle of wine, I'm sure that'll continue. But I'm told to stay hydrated today, so I will drink water then. We have time. We have about 10 minutes for Q&A, and I'm sure we have audience on virtually and also here in the room. So I've got a couple that have come in, and then I will take these, and then within the room, if anyone has questions, please put your hand up. We've only got 10 minutes, and I'm sure the panelists will stay around for some conversation after when we wrap up. So I'm going to start with the first question that came in. As a woman and a senior leader, I really struggle being called a female leader. I'm a leader, full stop. How does the panel feel as it relates to labeling, i.e. a female leader? Anyone want to respond to that one?
I think when I said, I know that I'm a black woman, like, you don't have to point it out to me. Oh my God, you're black and a woman.
Really?
I get it. I would just dismiss it. I think that it's other people's stuff that they need to sort out, and that's okay. I'm not judging it. That's okay if they're surprised or trying to do whatever it is that they're doing or figure out. I wouldn't make it your issue. If they want to call you whatever you want to call you, as long as it's not derogatory, know your pronouns. I'm okay with it. So I wouldn't get distracted by that. people want to put things in labels and boxes. I think it's just
I agree.
yeah.
Oh, moderator panel. Anyone else want to weigh in on that one?
No, I think that's right. I mean, you shouldn't be like making a difference between men and women. And
You're a
in
leader.
the mining industry, it's people. We're people, and we're all in this together to make it work. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have one little story I want to share because it was pretty impactful, but I didn't go in thinking that. It was 2015, I know other people have heard this. I was being interviewed for a board opportunity, and the CEO was the first interview I had, and he said to me, you know, I'm not interviewing you because you're a woman. I looked at him and I said, well, you know, I'm here because I can add value to your board, so let's talk about your strategy. So I wasn't going to let that define me, and I was not going to let that get in my way of having a good conversation.
Yeah.
And so I never thought about it. I didn't think, hey, I'm a woman, I have to be treated, and I'm sure we all have stories of that. So hopefully that answered that question for that. Wow, we've got quite a few questions coming in. Question. What do you hope your legacy will be? And I'm going to get each one of you to answer it. And it has to be a quick, off the top of your head. Arlene, your legacy.
I don't know, that I built something that makes a difference. I think being in a weird industry that's really rare, I would love that moment. Everybody knows that I've got my sort of like special projects that I'd want to do. I want my parents who don't really fully get what I do for a living to walk by and go, my daughter did that.
That's awesome. What's your legacy, Julie?
I'd love teaching younger people in this industry to carry on and not have to learn the same things, but to progress and go beyond. And so that would be my legacy, is teaching as many people who want to know, helping as many people who want to know to make this industry better and better.
That's wonderful. And Chantal?
Similarly, if I can help 1, 2, 3 people, or women or men, and progressing in this industry, that will be my legacy that I would like to live.
Wonderful. I took these from the poll, I think they were virtual questions. I'd love to hear, and there's trust me, there's a whole, we could be all afternoon here, but I'd love to hear anyone in the room, if they want to put their hand up, walk up closer. Oh my goodness. Okay, can you stand up? I don't know if there's a mic there for you, or I can give you my mic. Okay, good. Please do. Wonderful question, thank you. It would have gotten to me later, so I love hearing it in person. So what would be the one, let's start with you, Chantal. What would be the one thing?
Yeah, when I look back at my career, most opportunities were the direct result of having someone that I knew that recommended me to this job and whatnot. So when I think about that, you know, how important it is to expand your network. And with that in mind, I do keep a list of people that I know that I've met throughout the years that could be potentially a management position or a board position. So if I've been asked, I always have this list of active people that I can recommend. So
love that, love that. And then Julie.
I'd say be excellent. Be excellent at whatever you do. Be the best at what you do. Just know the information inside out and be excellent.
And I just got cued that all questions are in here, so thank you. I have one more question I'm going to take that came in, and we're going to end on this question. Any thoughts on current trends in corporate America? How about corporate Canada? Any thoughts on current trends in corporate North America, maybe, of DEI initiatives now being reversed or backtracked?
Any trend?
That are being reversed or backtracked in sort of corporate.
Yeah,
I
think we're at a pivotal time. I'm going to try to stay in my lane. I think what's happening south of the border is frightening. I think that the fact that it's happening, and we've seen what's happened at Harvard and these other situations where trying to change the dynamic of the conversation is coming from someone that has no complete lack of understanding of what this position is like and what it's being in. In Canada, we like to think that we're better. And, you know, I lived in the States for 15 years. I think that we have a duty to speak up. That one thing was to be an advocate. Don't sit in a room where the guy just repeated what the other woman just said like it was news. Don't remain silent when someone is being basically eliminated and wiped out of existence because someone is positioning or advocating something that you fundamentally think is wrong. In order to lead, you have to set the example, right? If my team does something wrong, I take full responsibility. If somebody is saying something and doing something that you know fundamentally is not the right thing to do, then your one thing that you can do is speak up. To remain silent, and this was the biggest thing with George Floyd, right? Like, the silence was killing Black people everywhere, right? Because for us, it was a Monday. It was just enough of a Monday, right? Like, when is enough enough? How many women have to step up and advocate for themselves? How many people of color? So I get emotional about what's happening there and that they think that enough has been done. We have not started to equivocate the systemic issues that have pervaded through the history of the world, right? We're just starting to level set. And so there will be those that will stand up and those that will sit down. And where you stand on this side of history, and I think it's amazing that, you know, as we look at Brian Mulrooney's passing, the biggest impact that changed my life was the fact that he played a big role in ending apartheid, right? At some point, you want to know which side of history you are going to stand on.
Wow. I think that question was perfectly crafted for you. I don't know, Julie or Chantal, if you want to weigh in any of that.
Anything to say would be inadequate.
I think always go out with a bang. So I want to take this moment and thank Julie, Arlene, and Chantal for sharing their stories. And also, I want to thank you all for making the time. This was an investment in you, a celebration of you, and celebration of community. So thank you for coming out today.
In mining, real estate, construction, pivotal sectors for Canada's growth, we've heard stories of resilience, determination, and triumph. These remarkable women, Arlene Dedier, Julie de Lorenzo, and Chantal Gosselin, have not just broken barriers, but have paved the way for a more inclusive and diverse future. I'd like to extend also my gratitude to our esteemed panelists for sharing their invaluable insights and your experiences. Dr. Deborah Rosati, your moderation has been exemplary, and thank you for guiding us through this enriching discussion. Hats off. To all our attendees, thank you for joining us on this journey of celebration and reflection. Let's carry forward the spirit of today's discussion, championing equality and opportunity for all. As a club of record, all Empire Club of Canada events are available to watch and listen to on demand on our website. The recording of this event will be available shortly, and everyone registered will receive an email with the link. On Thursday, March 21st, join us in person or virtually for a conversation with the Honourable Peter Bethenfalvey, Minister of Finance in Ontario, in anticipation of the 2024 provincial budget. On Wednesday, March 28th, join us for our Empire Nights event as we near the halfway point of Premier Doug Ford's second mandate. It's time to take a stock on his achievements and challenges and what it all means for the spring sitting of the Ontario Legislature. Thank you all for joining us today, and let's keep striving for progress together. This meeting is now adjourned.